Okay, you're recording. Aloha. Today I wanted to talk about a friend of mine and I just recently took that Myers-Briggs test. Not sure if you've ever taken one. And I wanted to talk about results and what I've learned and how to put that into use in your life. It's not going to be that in-depth, but I wanted to talk a little bit about it. But I was right in the center of two different personality types, campaigner, ENFP, and debater, ENTP, and I thought they were really interesting because they kind of they're similar, but they have a lot of differences. And the debater had a lot more of the I'm combative with the world, I want things my way, which is a little bit of my personality. And then the campaigner was a lot more free spirit, creative ideas, which is the other half of me, which made me think it's a lot like logic and creativity. It's a lot like masculinity and femininity, and how we all carry those in us at all times, but we let certain things project outward. And I just thought that was really interesting. But one thing that both of them told me is true of my personality type is that it's hard for me to create motivation for myself, and a lot of times my ideas remain just that, ideas, unless I spark the next part of the process, or if somebody motivates me to do better for myself. Because they were both saying that you're good at motivating others to get things done, but you don't have the best self-motivation qualities, which may be true for a lot of us, because a lot of people that I know are also good at motivating others, but not themselves. And I thought it was really interesting to focus in on that. And a great way to start is by jumping over the barriers we have in our own life. So come with me, will you? And don't mind my jockstrap. Alright, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the strengths and the weaknesses of an ENFP campaigner personality type, which is myself. And for those like me, just because it was giving me a lot of clarity and perspective into my own personality. And the strengths listed were that we're curious, we're observant, we're enthusiastic, we're very popular and friendly, we're excellent communicators, and we know how to relax. And I thought each one of those is describing a portion of myself that is to a T. It's perfectly representing who I am as a person. The curiosity, there was a good quote in here where it talks about viewing the whole world as a puzzle, and each piece of knowledge that we bring into our perspective is just one of the pieces. And I feel like that is this channel described perfectly, because I go back and I rewatch some of my videos and it's just one of the puzzle pieces. Everything that I take in, every observation, the next strength that I take in, is another piece of the puzzle, from body language to words used and exchanged. And I just use it all to create that one big puzzle piece. And I feel like life in itself is the giant puzzle, and we're just putting together each individual piece as we go along. That's what aging up or leveling up has to do with everything. Enthusiastic is pretty much self-explanatory. It talks about entering a room and you're seeking the fun, but more through a social interaction, and you want deeper connections with people. And then it also talks about how we're excellent communicators, which is spot on with that as well. We want to create in-depth relationships rather than have a lot of shallow one-on-one time. We want to get to know somebody, and I think that's so true, especially for the world we live in. It drives me almost mad to think about how we write people off this day and age with social media, and how block and delete is the new fad, and we don't get to know anybody anymore, and there's no compassion or empathy for anybody else's struggle. And that's something that I strive to overcome all the time in my life, to show that I care truly and deeply about the people that I bring into my life. And I think that's important for all of us to do, but I'm also learning that it's a personality trait of mine. Knowing how to relax, I find to be really interesting that it's a trait of mine, because I would have said I didn't possess that quality until I started smoking the herb. And then once I started doing that, I realized we don't have to stress about everything. A good way to disconnect from the chaos, the insanity, is to just relax, just to calm down. Another way to do that is just to learn how breathing affects your entire being, and being able to slow your mind down, taking deep breaths, and consciously being involved in that process. Okay, and the last strength is being popular or friendly. I find that one, that's the most vain one on the list. I feel like that one's a little gloating, a little too much boasting about a personality type, so I don't really like that one. I think naturally being friendly comes out in this personality tribe. However, at the same time, it's also describing how we have high expectations for people. So I feel like naturally being popular or friendly is a conception conceived through being social. So that one is honestly nothing that I would brag about being in this personality trait. It's just something that naturally comes along with it because you are a more social, interacting person. You're not as recluse, hermit, or introvert. So I think naturally being able to speak to people works well for us there. Now on to the weaknesses, which I thought were spot on as well. It talks about having poor practical skills, finding it difficult to focus, overthinking on things, and getting stressed too easily. All of those are extremely spot on, and the one that I thought kind of was an outlier was being highly emotional. But the only reason I feel like being highly emotional is an outlier is probably because I'm overly emotional, and because I take a lot of things to heart, and a lot of people describe me as not being an emotional person and being almost cold, but it's not true. Are these people just magically appearing out of thin air?
Yep.
Weren't they like literally, nobody was coming. I do think that the poor practical skills, the finding it difficult to focus, and overthinking things, I kind of mesh that all up in one. Overthinking things, absolutely. I stay up awake at night just overthinking everything I've done in my entire life. I've often told my friends that I feel like I live in the past. Memories are huge to me. I just said in one of these last videos I made that I always have not a regret, but a desire to go back to how things used to be. That's just me not being present in the now. And I think it relates to finding it difficult to focus. I think if you were a more focused person, you were able to meditate on the now and handle the things that are involved in your life at the moment and not focus on what you went through and how that affected you. And then poor practical skills, that talks about how it's hard for you to administer changes in your life for yourself, not on others. You have good leadership qualities within this personality tribe, but it talks about how for yourself, it's really hard for you to administer and to follow through in order to make an idea come to fruition, because it did say a lot of the problem with campaigner personality traits is that their ideas remain just that, ideas. And that's so true for me because I have tons of amazing ideas of what I want to do with my life, and I can picture how to make it happen, but bringing that into the material realm has often become so problematic I have to abandon the idea entirely because I don't know how to make it happen. So a lot of times using our strengths, which is our social skills and interaction, is a good way to find people who help motivate us and bring them into our life so that we have somebody who's almost cheerleading us and we are able to move forward with our ideas. And the last of the weaknesses are getting stressed out too easily, which I also think relates to overthinking, and then being independent to a fault. The stressed out too easily is often physical manifestations that I see are on my person myself. Like I've noticed that I'll break out, or I'll have headaches, or I'll feel dehydrated. Like a lot of things that happen to my body show me that I am stressed out. It also causes the lack of sleep, and I think that relates to the overthinking things. I think if I was able to relax better without weed, I'd be able to conquer that stress cause and be able to move on and better myself. But the last one to talk about was the independent to a fault, which I feel like is a huge downfall for us ENFPs, because I feel like we want to take on the world and we want to know that we can do it ourselves, but we need to learn that we have to work in campaign mode and we need to work with others well, and that's where our social interaction comes in key. And so just keep an eye out, if you are this personality trait, that your independence doesn't have to be your downfall, it can be your strength, and learn how to work with it. And finally, just related to the idea of these personality types, I wanted to talk about how my mind's kind of correlating it to the Zodiac Houses and the families there, because I think a lot of the energies do come from how we're brought into this world. And I was noticing right now we're in Aries, and Aries is representative of the I am power, and Taurus, the one we're heading into next come April, is going to be I think. And those two are just really important in how we start off our being. They're both in our head. Those are the only two zodiac houses that are within the head. The rest are body. And it's just interesting when you start to put together that I am and I think are representative of the beginning of the year and how we start off. And then I being an Aquarius is I know, and that's like having the knowledge encompassing the entire previous year. I think that has a lot to do with the personality trait I am. I am. Also, I draw in a lot of Leos into my life, and that is I will. So having willpower along with knowledge, I think, is an extremely bonding team. So I think you draw in the powers of the opposite house that you need. At least that's the experience I'm going through. And then I also thought it was really interesting how Pisces, or during a Yuga cycle, we go through 2,200 years approximately of an age. And the last age we were in was the age of Pisces, and that's why Jesus was the representative, the deity, because it stood for the fish, and it was a water sign. And now we're going into Aquarius ever since 2012, and it talks about how Aquarius is an air sign, and we're pulling things out of the water, the murky waters, into the air and making all things known and true. And it also talks about how Aquarius is the house of energy. So we're leaving the house of Pisces, which is the house of time, and we're pulling it into the house of energy. So it makes me think that time, the construct of time, the idea that we live within this time prison, is going to fade. And it's kind of weird because ever since 2012, my life has changed a lot via moving across the country and then onto an island. But how it's made it so time does get lost. You forget what day it is, you forget the month, you forget what to check a clock. And it's just interesting to me because it's representative of that. I'm not saying it's happening for everybody. It's probably not. And a lot of you are probably still living the same life you did 10 years ago, and that's fine. But it's interesting that my experience, my perspective is offering something completely different, and it's something I like to explore. So with all that information being said, and hopefully it sparks a curiosity in you to find out what personality trait you are, look more into your zodiac house, and just relate it to your life and how you're going forward during this insane journey that we call life. It's really unique, and the only thing we have to offer at the end of the day is our perspective. So voice it. Science is often combating religion. The idea of religion is just to believe in something higher, something that's running the show, the creator, the source of it all. And I was reading something fascinating about how atheism takes the most faith out of anything to believe in this thing, this explosion just creating everything from nothing. And have you ever witnessed that happening? No, you'd have to have a lot of faith in this thing that can't factually be proven. And so I was just thinking about how the Myers-Briggs test, the one that I've been speaking on, that deals with personalities, is kind of the scientific version of what zodiac houses stand for. And so really I believe that we need to have an understanding that having faith in something higher and looking to the stars and reading them like all our ancestors ever have, and passing on stories via culture, and having healthy nutrition and realizing what our bodies are and alkalizing versus acidifying. All of that is important information. The Myers-Briggs test, though fascinating, is probably just an interpretation or misinterpretation of what our zodiac houses stand for. I'm not saying all Aquariuses are the same, and I'm not saying all Leos are the same, but I think it's derived from something like that. And I do think the 12 families represented in the Illuminati, the elite, the people who run the world, however you want to describe that are represented on our money, our monetary system here on the dollar. There's 12 houses that are passed along on the dollar, which are represented by a number 1 through 12. There's also 12 zodiac houses, and I feel like this is all just signs and symbols. Signs and symbols rule the world, and it's just stuff that we have to take in. So Myers-Briggs, a really interesting thing to delve into, to learn. I encourage you to find yours out, or if you're not interested in it, just read up on what they are. But I do think it's a representation of what our zodiacs stand for, and the more you look into it, the more I realize I am a true Aquarian, and at the same time, this campaigner personality trait seemed so much like me. I think they're related. So I just wanted to make that little piece of knowledge available in this video as well. But thanks again, and Good night.